Yes!
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist. In the past few days, we've got some exciting news about Resident Evil, the final chapter. And as we all know, this is not the final chapter. Maybe for the film franchise, but not for any fans at home. We're gonna forever remember how bad this whole franchise was. But today, let's try and appreciate the old. So, we're gonna play the next in our ascension of the Resident Evil franchise, which for us means Resident Evil Nemesis, or Resident Evil 3. Kind of explains why I've got a super scope. You know, because Nemesis has a rocket launcher. We're gonna explain that in like the next 30 minutes, so you got plenty of time. Grab a popcorn, grab a soda. We're playing the GameCube version. It's gonna be great. These days, the Resident Evil franchise has permeated comics, toys, a god-awful film series, and even Etsy products. Look, someone made a Leon Kennedy wig. But allow me to take you back to the mid to late 90s. The first two Resident Evil games had enjoyed widespread popularity, but the series was still relatively new and unexplored. But if you let any successful horror franchise run for long enough, it'll eventually start experimenting with some weird shit. Jason Voorhees took Manhattan, Chucky got married and had a creepy baby, but Resident Evil? Resident Evil reached a point where it felt confident enough to create a game that starred everyone's favorite faceless mercenary Hunk in a mission to retrieve a sample of the G-Virus from a luxury cruise liner. Come on, you guys remember Hunk, right? He's that one dude who pops up every now and then in a short post-campaign mission and says absolutely nothing. No? No one? Okay. Well, luckily and thankfully, his game was canceled. But in order to fill the gap and keep fans from waiting too long for another Resident Evil title, Capcom plucked a small spin-off game from the sidelines, which another team had been working on, by the way. Originally, this sideline project was known as Biohazard 1.9, and it starred a brand new protagonist whose aim was to escape from an infected Raccoon City. But once the game had been promoted to a full-fledged mainline title, Jill Valentine's familiar face was then brought in to replace the new guy. Sorry, dude, we never got to meet. The name of the game was also changed to Resident Evil 3 in order to keep it in line with the other mainline Resident Evils on the PlayStation console. But the changes did not stop there. There were plenty of other gameplay innovations as well. The game featured eerie exterior environments, new combat moves for the player to perform, and Nemesis, the game's persistent, eponymous antagonist. All these additions were just hints at how much Capcom was willing to risk with one of their flagship titles. When it was finally released in 1999, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis quickly became a bestseller and won over the fans. Critics loved its innovations, as well as how it held on to the things that made previous Resident Evils so awesome. Now, Nemesis has become one of the more popular branches of the Resident Evil lore. It had its very own god-awful movie, and basically everyone and their mom knows who Nemesis is. This guy was in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for God's sakes. He may not say very much, but it's very clear how the big guy feels about his popularity. You may think you can see his teeth because he doesn't have any lips, but think again, he's smiling. He's a happy boy. Now, even though this is Resident Evil 3, most of the game actually takes place just before the events of Resident Evil 2. Our main character and narrator is none other than Jill Valentine, one of the first two playable characters from the first Resident Evil game. But I guess living through a torturous, horrifying experience like the Spencer Mansion incident takes a toll on your demeanor, because now Jill's obsessed with bringing down Umbrella, the sinister organization that controls all of Raccoon City and whose public face is that of a benevolent pharmaceutical company. When you think about it, that would be like CVS secretly owning the entirety of Burbank, California. Wait a minute. There's a whole bunch of CVS's in Burbank. Everyone get out of Burbank! Jill may sound like a raving conspiracy theorist, but she believes that something really bad is about to go down. So, she prepares to escape from the city by getting her hair done and throwing on a tube top and miniskirt. Woo! Tactical gear. Meanwhile, the inevitable zombie outbreak has already begun, and things aren't looking too good for the citizens of Raccoon City. The virus has already ravaged the populace, and there are zombies everywhere. But unlike Jill, the rest of the cops actually attempt to do their jobs instead of abandoning their posts. But maybe Jill had the right idea after all, because they do get ran through like a Vegas buffet. Even Umbrella Corporation's personal mercenaries are getting ate up here. Is there nobody who can stop these eating machines? Jill apparently took too long getting ready because she's blown clean out of her apartment building. It's not nice to keep the undead waiting, Jill. Come on. Now, she's alone on the streets with nothing but the moans of thousands of ghouls to keep her company. Oh, but she's got her gun too, so that's pretty important. Jill's mission is to get to a safe haven, but instead, she finds her way to the Raccoon City police station, which we all know is filled with the worst horrors imaginable. Upon arriving, she encounters her old STARS partner, Brad, but right behind him is the Big Daddy himself, Nemesis. This mysterious, seemingly unstoppable Hulk's sole purpose is to hunt down and take out the members of STARS. So, he picks up Brad and introduces a tentacle to the back of his skull. Later, man. After narrowly escaping the Nemesis, Jill takes refuge in the police station, leaving her on her own without a clue on how to escape the city. Now, as far as Resident Evil stories go, this one feels a bit less mysterious and eerie than previous entries. Instead of slowly letting events unfold and maintaining a spooky vibe, this game immediately throws you into the action. Pretty understandable when you consider that Resident Evil 3 was originally intended as a companion piece to Resident Evil 2. Not to mention the fact that it stars a returning character. No need to spend time introducing her to players. It's Jill. She's back, and she's not a sandwich. Not yet, at least.
You were almost a Jill sandwich.
This game's placement on the Resident Evil timeline also allows it to shed some light on a few events from the previous game. For instance, now we know exactly how Brad became a zombie that stalks the grounds outside the police station. The more you know. The stories in Resident Evil games have never been Oscar-worthy, but this one has that much less of a narrative presence. It's basically an action movie. And yes, I know that Code Veronica was even more of an action movie than this one, and Part 4 was even more actiony than that one, and Resident Evil 5 was even worse, and then 6. Who will save us from this downward spiral of brainless action? Oh, help us, Resident Evil 7. You're our only hope. Oh, there's VR. There's VR. There's VR. There's VR, you guys. Resident Evil Nemesis is like the rebellious third child of the Capcom survival horror family. It took one look at its two big sisters and said, not me, I'm doing my own thing. And we're not that mad at you, Nemesis, because a lot of the ways that you chose to veer off the beaten path turned out to actually be pretty awesome. For example, there's no substitute for the terror that comes from being trapped in a creepy old confined mansion, or a cold, claustrophobic police station. But making your way through the chaotic streets of Raccoon City delivers another kind of dread that's just as potent. In Nemesis, you spend far more time outside than in any previous Resident Evil. And even though you get to explore some of Raccoon City in Resident Evil 2, the entire urban sprawl is your playground in the sequel. The fact that you still feel that familiar sense of paranoia while in the open air is a testament to how well designed the game is. And the best part is, even though we spend so much time in the great outdoors, there are still plenty of tight hallways, well-placed camera angles, and cleverly scripted moments one would associate with the series. All the characters and enemies look better than ever, and the backgrounds are more detailed than ever before. There's a lot of different locales around Raccoon City, each with their own ambient and subtle personal history. Every little room and area tells a story if you're willing to slow down and check them out. This strong sense of place is, without a doubt, thanks to developers' decision to once again employ pre-rendered backgrounds and static camera angles. Sure, fully 3D environments and controllable cameras were all the rage at the time, but thankfully, the guys at Capcom remembered that one of the best ways to scare the piss out of their players was to carefully orchestrate what the players can and can't see at all times. In Resident Evil 3, we are still masterfully strung along from moment to moment. even if those moments are a bit more action-packed than normal. The game's music is often incredibly moody, haunting, and beautiful. Every now and then it fits that perfect level of delicacy where you're not actively aware of the soundtrack, but it's manipulating your emotions all at the same time. Look, I don't need you keeping me on the edge of my seat, music. The giant rocket launcher wielding zombie man is doing just fine. Give me some space! And I had to give a special shout out to what many consider to be the pinnacle of all Resident Evil tunes, the save room music. No other tracks come this close to perfectly encapsulating the bittersweet feeling of discovering a haven from the undead, and at the same time, knowing that you'll eventually have to leave it behind. Hey, at least in this game, we don't have any soundtracks like this. This was in the director's cut of Resident Evil 1. I'm sorry to bring it back up, but it's just the director's cut. They had plenty of time. Yet here's some good news. I'm happy to report that the quality of the voice acting continues its upward swing in Nemesis.
Are you crazy? You could have barbecued both of us.
Don't get me wrong, it's still Resident Evil voice acting.
Nikolai won't be joining us.
But it no longer makes you question reality when you hear it. Good job, guys. No Razzies for you guys.
You don't get it. They have no intention of letting us make it back alive.
Well, maybe some of you guys. You know, I would say that the biggest way in which Nemesis differs from the other RE titles is pacing. Nemesis makes you feel like you're constantly being pushed faster than ever before. There are still quiet moments for contemplation and puzzle solving, but for the most part, this game moves at turbo speed. And that being said, things are still plenty spooky, and I mean plenty. It's just that while the other games engender terror and dread, this one gives you a great big old dose of panic and paranoia. Just what the doctor goddamn ordered. Hey, Nemesis, take a Prozac. Step off, you're stressing me out here. Hey, if all this talk of a different kind of Resident Evil and changing up the formula was making you nervous, then relax. Don't worry. Nemesis still plays like a classic RE game. You still have to pick up items to unlock doors that hold items that lead to other keys to other doors. You still have to solve cryptic and creepy-ass puzzles all over the place. And attempting to defeat every enemy you come across is still a very, very bad idea, considering your limited ammo and health recovery items. This game is full of the classic survival horror that we know and love. And love them or hate them, take controls are how you're going to be piloting Jill through her quest. However, Jill does have some new techniques never before available in a Resident Evil game. If you pull a Han Solo and accidentally run into a room with tons of enemies, you no longer have to slowly rotate all the way around before you have to get out of there. You can now perform a quick 180-degree turn, which makes maneuvering a lot more forgiving. And if you're about to get grabbed by a ghoulie, you can perform a defensive dodge. The timing for this move is pretty strict, and I still haven't figured out how to get it to work consistently. Resident Evil 3 also changes the ammo game significantly with the introduction of the reloading tool and the various accompanying gunpowders. You'll still find lots of ammo for all your weapons in this game, but you'll also stumble across different types of gunpowder that can be transformed into different types of ammo when you use them with the reloading tool. There are only a few kinds of gunpowder, but mixing and matching them in different ratios will yield just about any kind of ammo you really need. It might be cumbersome to carry around yet another type of item, using up another slot, and it might take more time to fabricate ammo as opposed to just picking it up. It's an interesting addition that really puts into perspective just how many gun nuts were living in Raccoon City. I mean, seriously, there's gunpowder and ammo everywhere, and these people still went down like bitches because of zombies. One of the coolest new features is the live selection mode. Occasionally, you'll encounter these moments when the game presents you with a binary choice. You can choose between option A or option B, and depending on what you choose, the game's path can change drastically. Those of you with anxiety need not panic. No choices will directly lead to Jill getting hurt or dying, but certain choices will put her into contact with more enemies. You've still got your zombies, Cerberuses, and crows, but the most important enemy of all in this game, if you haven't gotten it by the title right now, is Nemesis himself, who's more than just the toughest dude on the block. He also provides tons of new and exciting mechanics too. First of all, Nemesis doesn't give any about any doors. You can't rely on the old, oh, I'll just skip through the door and completely avoid this enemy trick when it comes to Nemesis. He's learned to open doors. He's learned to open doors. He's learned to open doors! Once he finds you, oh, and he will find you, he'll usually chase your ass down from room to room for a good distance. He can sometimes be avoided, but it's tough since he runs faster than you, and he happens to have a goddamn rocket launcher and can just bop you from wherever he is. When Nemesis shows up, he often triggers a live selection moment, with one choice leading to running away and one leading to confronting the monster. If you choose to fight this guy, then come prepared. Come heavily prepared. He's extremely hard to bring down, and he tends to get back up on his feet at least once per fight. Of course, since he is the main bad guy of the game, just because you defeat him once doesn't mean that he'll stay that way. You'll encounter him again and again and again and again over the course of the whole game. He's like that desperate dude who you gave your number to once, but then he just won't take the hint that you're not interested in hanging out. Dude, find someone else. I think we were pretty lucky that things got so shaken up during the development of Resident Evil 3. It's clear that one of the reasons the developers felt so free to try new things was because it originally started out as a side game, but the new stuff combined with the tried and true makes this a pretty great Resident Evil game. Just make sure to watch your back for Nemesis. Listen and understand. Nemesis is out there. He cannot be bargained with, he can't be reasoned with, it doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear. It will absolutely not stop ever until you are dead. Soon, he's gonna run for the governor of California, and he's gonna win. Who will stop him then, huh? Who?
Hasta la vista, baby.
Jill has had one rough night. She's been all over the goddamn city trying to find a way out. She's been dodging Nemesis like she owes him rent money. She managed to befriend a few Umbrella mercenaries, but two of them died on her, and one of them won't stop coming on to her. And just when she thought she found her ride out of town, Nemesis infected her with the T-virus cooties. Thankfully, Carlos, the guy who won't stop trying to get into her pants, managed to find her a cure. But in a move that absolutely shocked no one, Nikolai, one of the mercenaries Jill thought was dead, turned out to be alive, and guess what? He's a villain. The mercs weren't sent into the city to rescue civilians after all. They were actually sent to assess how effective the undead monsters were at killing everyone. I think it's pretty safe to say that they're pretty damn good at it, you guys. And to make matters worse, Umbrella needs to cover up their dirty work, so they have unleashed a missile that will soon wipe out the entire city and everyone in it. Jill has managed to fulfill her destiny as a Resident Evil protagonist and has found her way to an industrial facility for the climax of the game. Nikolai, like any good Weasley villain, gets his comeuppance. But just as Jill is just moments away from being able to escape her dreaded nightmare, she's confronted once again by Nemesis. And from the looks of him, he's had a pretty rough night too. You've got just under 4 minutes to take him down, which shouldn't be a problem if you've been stocking up on powerful ammo like magnum rounds and grenades. But there's also an alternative way to approach this fight. There are valves on the wall that, when shot, will spew hot acid. If you manage to lure Nemesis right next to one of them, then make a well-placed shot towards the wall, he'll take a ton of damage. After taking him down, Jill comes across a big room that contains a massive rail cannon, but both it and the only door out of there require a few batteries in order to be powered up. And as she does so, the barely recognizable, heavily mutated body of Nemesis crashes from the ceiling. And then it starts feasting on the carcass of the defeated tyrant monster from the previous game. You're not supposed to feed your Nemesis after midnight, and now he's grown some new limbs, and he's ready to try and kill Jill one last time. Give it up, dude. She doesn't like you that way. You've already got her number. What else more do you want? You've still got to insert the rest of the batteries to activate the cannon, all while avoiding his attacks. But once they're all in, the cannon begins to charge up. Your goal is to lead Nemesis into its line of fire, and if you manage to do so, one shot is all it needs to shred right through him. But just as she's about to make her own escape, Nemesis starts crawling toward her again, initiating the final live selection of the game. You can choose to simply exit, leaving Nemesis to die in the inevitable missile explosion. Or you can make it personal and have Jill grab a nearby magnum, walk over to the monster, Dirty Harry style of course, and put several bullets into him.
You want stars? I'll give you stars.
Finally, Nemesis is dead. For good this time. No, really, he's dead, I promise. Jill makes her way outside where Carlos is waiting for her with a helicopter. Just as they fly away, the missile makes contact, obliterating Raccoon City like one of Sarah Connor's nightmares. But Jill flies away, undoubtedly toward what will be hours of in-flight time, along with Carlos and his advances. He'll probably drone on about his hair and how much he can bench press. Jill, after all this, your nightmare is just beginning. Alright, so being cooped up with Carlos isn't the only outcome for Jill once the credits roll. There's actually an alternate ending that can be seen by making a particular choice during one of the game's live selections. When you encounter Nemesis on the bridge between the park and the final laboratory, you can choose to drop off the bridge or push that sucker off yourself. Pushing him off results in the ending that we already discussed. However, if you choose to drop off yourself and then complete the game as usual, you'll be treated to an ending in which Jill and Carlos are picked up by none other than Barry Burton. Hey, buddy, good to see that you're still alive. Also, where the fuck have you been this whole time, dude? Sure could have used your help, asshole. Now, I'm not sure which of these endings is the canon one, but I guess it doesn't really matter either. It's just nice to see a fan favorite character pop up now and again. Beating the game for the first time will unlock the minigame known as the Mercenaries, Operation Mad Jackal. It's quite appropriate that the name sounds like a straight-to-video action film, because that's exactly what this mode feels like. The premise of this incredibly non-canon unlockable sees Police Chief Brian Irons implanting bombs into the 3 members of the Umbrella Mercenary Corps from the main game. If they want to stay alive, they have to reach a safe room within 2 minutes. The player is able to add more time to this countdown by taking out enemies in rapid succession and saving survivors throughout the city. When the challenge is over, you'll receive a grade based on your performance, as well as some cash as a reward. These funds can be used to purchase some really cool items for use back in the main game, such as a Gatling gun, an assault rifle, a rocket launcher, all with infinite ammo. Each of the 3 playable characters offer a completely different experience, with Mikhail being the easiest and Nikolai being the hardest piece of shit in this game. Seriously, he comes with barely any items or equipment when compared to the other 2 characters. One of his weapons is the knife. The knife! Guys, Resident Evil and knives do not go well together, and this mercenary mode is the perfect disaster. Getting an 8 ranking with him is damn near impossible unless you never get hit, save all the hostages, and take down just the right amount of enemies to keep the clock alive. You can also unlock costumes for Jill to change into during the main campaign. All of these costumes are accessed during actual gameplay in a store in Uptown Raccoon City known as the Boutique. To get inside, you have to get the key, but don't worry, it's yours as long as you beat the game in less than 7 hours using no more than 30 ink ribbons. On the difficulty meter, it's the exact opposite of Nikolai's mercenary run. The costumes themselves can be unlocked by beating the game with high enough ratings. If you manage to beat the game on hard mode with an A rating, then you'll unlock all 5 costumes, which include Jill's classic Resident Evil 1 costume, Regina's costume from Dino Crisis, a disco suit, a simple policewoman's uniform, and a biker outfit. Work it, girl, strut your stuff. The unlockables don't stop there, though. You can get yourself some truly badass weaponry if you face your fears and choose to repeatedly confront Nemesis in the main campaign. See, every time you defeat him in hard mode, he drops a different item. Beating him the first time makes him drop the Eagle Parts A, and the second time yields the Eagle Parts B. Combining them will give you the STI Eagle, a powerful handgun with a high rate of fire, increased reload speed, and a high chance of critical hits. The third and sixth time you bop him will reward you with first aid boxes, which can hold 3 first aid sprays at a time. But beating him a fourth and fifth time will give you the parts needed to construct the Western Custom M37. It's a high-powered shotgun that can deal massive damage even to the toughest of enemies. And if you beat him a seventh time, he'll drop a badass assault rifle. Now Jill can be a mercenary too. But if you beat him on a seventh time on a subsequent playthrough, you'll actually get an item that can upgrade one of your guns to have infinite ammo. It's really cool to be able to choose which of your weapons becomes an overpowered killing machine. There's also a cool little Easter egg that unlocks when you collect every document in the game in order and read them to completion. If you do so, the first book in your file will be replaced with Jill's diary. Ooh, we get to read her diary. Get your popcorn ready. It details Jill's personal thoughts after her time at the Spencer Mansion, her observations of Chris Redfield, and her reasoning behind remaining in the city. But no word on who her secret crush is, though. My money's on Barry. It's always on Barry. And lastly, you can unlock several text-based epilogues for various Resident Evil characters by repeatedly beating the game on hard mode. Each time you do so, you'll be shown a brief write-up of what the characters have been up to after the events of the game. There are epilogues for Jill, Chris, Barry, Leon, Claire, Sherry Birkin, Ada Wong, and even Hunk. Seeing them all means beating the game a minimum of 8 times on hard mode. And believe it or not, there actually is a completion bonus for doing so. It's a special director's message that says thank you for playing, and attempts to put a bookend on the Raccoon City chapter of Resident Evil. I wonder if they had any idea of what Resident Evil would ultimately become when they wrote this message. Real talk though, I'm excited for Resident Evil 7. It looks kind of dope, even if it may be in VR. I don't know, man. The VR thing confuses me, but I'm a good 80% there. 80%. It's a good number. Resident Evil 3 stuffs a lot of fun, tense moments, along with some smart gameplay, into a pretty small package. The game is pretty short, and it's not that hard, but playing the game over and over again for minimal rewards does begin to wear on your psyche. Playing through the game once or twice is a blast, and even the mercenary mode provides some welcome diversion from time to time. But fully completing this game by beating it no less than 8 times, well, it's just really the worst. It doesn't even take that long, you've got access to overpowered weapons, and by your third time through, you're basically an expert. But anything repeated this many times just really stops being fun. In my playthrough of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, there were 32 "You Died" screens, 24 ink ribbons used, 32 hours of total playtime, 8 full campaign playthroughs, over 50 times the Nemesis was brought down, and 1 Italian BMT 12-inch on white with spinach, lettuce, tomatoes, oil, and vinegar, affectionately called the Jill Sandwich. Yeah. Nemesis is an integral part of Resident Evil history, and one of the best games on the PlayStation. Playing it again, it's just as good as it was for the very first time. But if you're playing this for completion, you're better off just checking them out on YouTube. Resident Evil 3 for the PlayStation 1 and the Nintendo GameCube is a pretty good time. It's held up pretty well over the years, and the GameCube version definitely shows that. However, if you're a completionist, you're really gonna go crazy with this. Playing the game 8 times on hard mode is going to drive you nuts. Getting all of the journals is gonna be incredibly tedious and not a good time at all. And mercenary mode is pretty balls. It's like pretty balls hard. You're not gonna have a good time. I will say though, if you're not completing the game, you're just doing it for the story, doing it for your traditional Resident Evil style. The tank controls are still there. They're still not great, but you know what? At this point, where we are in the game series, you're used to it at this point, I feel. I feel like you've gotten used to playing the tank controls and you've adapted to it. At least I have. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finna play it.
Finna play it!
That's all the time we have for today, guys, so please, as always, let me know what you thought about today's episode somewhere on the internet. question of the day: if you had to deal with Nemesis, how would you do it and why? Now, if you excuse me, here's me running like hell from Nemesis several times. He's scary.